Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a 2018 American computer animated superhero film produced by Columbia Pictures and Sony Pictures Animation in association with Marvel and distributed by Sony. It is the first animated feature film in the Spider-Man/Marvel universe, unless you count Big Hero 6. And it's set in a shared multiverse called the Spider-Verse, which is basically a series of alternate universes. This film is not only wonderfully written, directed, and acted, it is also visually stunning, beautiful, and remarkably enjoyable. In fact, it may be the most Spider-Man of all the Spider-Man movies, if that makes any sense. It has easily climbed its way into the top of my 5 greatest superhero comic book movies list. So first, let's talk about the animation. It took 4 years to create the world that blended real-world images and animation in a way that almost makes you feel as though the Marvel universes are colliding right before your eyes. The movie is colorful in ways that haven't been realized in a Marvel film since Guardians of the Galaxy, and Volume 2, respectively. Honorable mentions for Black Panther and Thor Ragnarok, because it was right. What is most intriguing, however, is how the animation might actually be overshadowed by the amazingly well-crafted story of an ordinary boy. Let me also just point out that hearing Miles' mother call out to him in Spanish in a way that felt completely natural made me feel absolutely engrossed in this film. And like all true Puerto Ricans, a Puerto Rican flag can be seen on Miles' suitcase, because all Puerto Ricans have an instinctual drive to announce their cultural heritage to everyone they meet, with either a flag made out of beads, or a loud baseball jersey, a Taino tattoo of the sun or a frog, speaking in Spanglish, or with that red, white, and blue CD thing that people leave dangling on their car from the little mirror, despite the fact that we use MP3s now and streaming devices today, so there's no logical reason for that to be there, and it's probably illegal in your state anyway. Just saying. In many different versions, Spider-Man is either considered a threat to public safety, largely ignored amongst the larger Marvel pantheon, or just an ordinary guy doing his part. The MCU has kind of kept Peter young so as to show how he'll grow from street-level friendly neighborhood Spider-Man to full-blown legend. Into the Spider-Verse shows us a world in which Spider-Man is beloved, even after a full-on dance sequence that in real life killed the Raimi Maguire film series. It's in the wake of the demise of this universe Peter Parker at the hands of a grown-up boss baby, Kingpin, which Miles not only bears witness to, but also fails to prevent because of his inability to act despite having newfound spider powers, which forms the crux of this story's emotional journey. That anyone can be Spider-Man, as long as they step up. Shedding a tear for the Stan Lee cameo that not only makes for a good moral, but also foreshadows an interesting plot point as well. Miles' journey mirrors Peter's in that he realizes that all it takes for evil to persist is for good people to do nothing. This is not only what makes Peter essentially Miles' Uncle Ben, but also gives Peter a worthy death, as well as establishing a new character without having to erase the history of the old one. It's a passing of a mantle in some ways, but not only from one fictional character to another, really from one generation of readers, viewers, and fans to the next. But Peter still has a role to play, as the film sets up multiple universes potentially colliding, and normally I find this sort of plot terrifyingly cliche and outright cringeworthy. Looking at you, Howard the Duck. Yet this film is made better for not killing Peter Parker entirely, just this particular version of him, which happens to look an awful lot like Ben Reilly's The Infamous Sponsor, for the purposes of dropping even more Easter eggs, which this movie has in spades, mind you. Did you know? Okay, tangent. The device from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs appears in the Collider at one point, and Stan Lee has a single frame cameo, as well as the numerical value of 42 being present to not only pay homage to Jackie Robinson, but also to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy's answer to the life, the universe, and everything, while simultaneously referencing other Spider-Man films and real-world Spider-Man iconography, such as those nightmare-inducing popsicles I used to buy from my neighborhood Mr. Softy in the Bronx. This movie is, in a way, as much of a love letter to the character of Peter Parker as the Lego Batman movie was to its titular character. One of the many successes of this film is that it makes Miles so relatable as a teenager, dealing with totally normal adolescent struggles while balancing the hero game. You never really miss Peter in the title role. He works so well as a supporting character, as kind of the guy who is tired and almost at his wit's end, and is rejuvenated by Batman Beyond. I mean, by Miles. A few other things of note. The voice of Cliff Robertson, who played Uncle Ben in the Sam Raimi franchise, is used during Peter's summarized origin. Uncle Aaron, voiced by Mahershala Ali, which in and of itself is an Easter egg, as he famously portrayed the villain Cottonmouth in Marvel/Netflix Luke Cage, and who was previously portrayed in the live-action Marvel Cinematic Universe by Donald Glover, who played Troy Barnes on the cult TV show Community, which Uncle Aaron happens to be watching when he is introduced on screen. Worth mentioning further is that the series creator Dan Harmon has been tapped on occasion as a writer on several MCU films, and Captain America Winter Soldier, Captain America Civil War, Avengers Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame directors Joe and Anthony Russo also happen to be Community alums. Interestingly, several other co-stars have crossed over from Community, including Jim Rash, who played the Dean Pelton. The Dean appeared in Civil War during Tony Stark's introduction, and Danny Pudi, who portrayed a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent in Winter Soldier, and happens to be the best friend of Troy Barnes, which brings us to the final and most earth-shattering Easter egg, in that Donald Glover once publicly vied for the role of Peter Parker when Spider-Man movies were being rebooted, which resulted in him voicing the character of Miles Morales in a Spider-Man animated series, as well as starring as Uncle Aaron in the MCU Spider-Man Homecoming. Let that sink in.
And half the world was like, Donald for Spider-Man. We're only going to watch the next Spider-Man and Donald Glover's playing Peter Parker. He's black, kill him!
Yeah, I'm so cold like, yeah. I'm so dull like, yeah. Woo.
Also worth mentioning is the soundtrack, which is phenomenal. And the villain's motivation is equally credible and emotionally impactful. The audience can relate to Kingpin's motivation, and it feels genuine. And the impact of the motivation is what makes him so dangerous, and even more so than any of the other more fantastical villains. Also, I love how this movie sets up Aunt May as a force to be reckoned with, all on her own. Sort of like Alfred Pennyworth character who supports Peter's mission and may actually be on par with him scientifically, as it's implied in dialogue that she's responsible for his spider lair, all the gadgets, and may have had a working relationship with Olivia Octavius. Bottom line, this movie delivers and deserves to be seen over and over. 4K if you have your HD player. It has changed the way we view animation, and the story has created a new chapter in the Spider-Man mythos that we hope brings Donald Glover's unseen nephew to the MCU sooner rather than later. If you're a returning viewer, thanks, we appreciate the support. And this is your first time checking us out, please hit that like button and that subscribe button and a little bell thingy if you want to keep getting some more of these videos. We really appreciate all the support. I say we, like there's more than one person behind me. It's literally just me.